Call the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for Monday, July 10th, 2023 at 6 p.m. to order. Roll call declaration of the quorum by Secretary Parker. Here. Present. Here. Here. Here.
Jordan.
Here.
Lumber.
Here.
Roll call for ETZ.
Wilson.
Here.
Cronin.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
And Lumber.
Here.
Great. Public comments. Is there anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Second time, anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Michael, anybody? No. All right, third time, anybody online or in the audience that wishes to make a comment? Hearing none, we will move on to minutes from previous meetings. Items 4 and 5, minutes from the May 8th, 2023 joint PC and ETZ meeting, and minutes from the June 12th, 2023 PC meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Deason,
Second.
So the ETC only needs to take action on 4,
or,
Okay.
and the planning commission is 5.
my bad, okay, so we have,
Yeah, because you already approved the May 8th one.
I see that.
ETC hasn't been here since then.
so motion by Olson, second by Gerndt, for item number 4. On the question, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Item number 5, minutes from June 12th, 2023 PC meetings.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Jordan, second by Deason. On the question, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals during this time. Written communications received.
I don't have it.
Public hearings, we have none. New business, project number 2023-0085, revision to site plan approval for 3200 and 3202 Schofield Avenue. ABC Weston LLC, 192-2808, 173-0982.
So if you scroll to page 46 in the packet, you can see the red line version of the site plan that you approved a few months ago. They're making a change to the fence. So they had the fence offset on the property line and now facing it on the property line. The other thing that they asked for was to move the sign, which the sign will come underneath a separate permit later on. I did question them about the fact that they're moving the sign right where they're putting snow storage and I never got a response. So we'll just deal with that at a later date when the sign permit actually comes in.
Where is the sign currently?
So they said that they're going to put the sign over on the other side, but you guys didn't approve the sign the first time, so they had it on the left side of the and they want to move it to the right. That's where there's no storage is. So
Is it a monument sign or I don't know?
they didn't even give it to us, so I'm guessing it's a monument sign. But we'll take care of it at that time.
Okay, so we only changed the fence.
Yep, it's the front, so because you're the site plan for both already, we just wanted you to know that is there and have our put in it. Because this was also a project that was TIF funded.
What's your voting?
I'll move to approve the site plan revision for ABC Weston LLC for the new fence location.
Motion by Mumper,
Second?
second by Pincinel. Hearing none, Jesus, sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Sorry about that. I don't sound too much there.
We approve both. You propose that as well?
No, just the
No,
fence
just
and
the
the sign's gotta come back.
The sign will just be done through the regular project, so when we get that far.
Thank you.
All right, item number 8, discussion of possible future updates, chapter 94 zoning. Amendments to section 94.12.09, parent 14, bicycle parking.
So there are a number of items on here that were either referred from the last planning commission meeting to kind of discuss or from the board. For the planning commission to start looking at. This is all to kind of start the discussion. And because this could potentially impact the ETZ area or will be asked to, potentially just to make that code a little bit easier for staff to deal with, we tend to put a lot of the same stuff in here. And the fact that the ETZ area does have, when we get to the point of talking about chickens, you guys do have some single family and large lot and small lot that would be affected too. So that is why you are all here to talk about this together. But this is just to start again the discussion. So I guess we can kind of start with the bicycle parking. This one came up with the project symbol last month. Jim had asked to put this on the agenda and to kind of look at it and make it easier for staff. I was only able to do some preliminary looks at codes around the area. You know, of course, the cities have a little bit more in-depth codes. Few communities don't have any codes whatsoever, and a couple of them are kind of similar to ours. So I did put our code. If you go to page 48, we have what we have currently in our code. Then I have the city of Wausau, which you can see is quite a bit lengthier. Stevens Point is even lengthier. Remote is very similar to ours, and then Clover, Rothschild, Unalaska, and Little Chute have no requirements. So our code does say no fewer than 2 spaces for 20 or more vehicle spaces. I put in there that I like the way that Wausau uses that number of 4 spaces for a lot of their projects, but I also thought that number might be too high for us. Thoughts on that. If you want to get some direction, like I said, this would have to come back. I didn't want to do too much without knowing where we were going with it.
Can you tell us more about the inverted U? I see that we have it listed on there that it counts as 2, when I want to say it's Wausau or somebody says you must have an inverted U. Or they want you to have something that you can lock them.
Yeah,
Isn't that where it goes like this?
yeah, it's like
Right, so it's like a drive-through, pull up, you know.
Yeah, but why are we specifically calling that out? Wouldn't common sense say if I could put 2 bicycles there, it counts as a 2 bike rack? If I could put 32 bicycles there, it's a 32 bike rack, whether it's a U, Z, L, elemental P,
It
whatever.
might just be a standard. Ours says an inverted U or similar in cable which would count as 2 spaces. Because there's different ones. I mean, they have the old school ones where they're just like a line. I think it's just a suggestion.
Do we have it, does that have to be permanent bike rack?
I don't-
You know, you should bring up the fact like the old one.
We just say we show that you have to provide bicycle parking spaces. So it could be like one of those that are just like, typically they show a designated spot on a plan.
Sure.
It's just so that there's an area so that, you know, somebody's not leaving their bike in front of the door at like a gas station or something like that. They could have a little area where they can park.
Is this something we need to call out in our zoning code? I see there's some other communities that don't even
I
have
don't know.
requirements. I'm
We don't
I'm just
have
asking.
to. We don't have to. It's just providing multimodal. I mean, the biggest areas would be around Stouffville Avenue. When we get into the industrial park, it's probably not that big of a deal.
Right.
Well, like what Aldi's has got one in between,
They just have one by the sidewalk, yeah.
well, it's in between their 2 detention ponds.
Mhm.
And I think that looks really nice.
Yeah, it just makes it so that somebody can
Right.
use it if they want
And
to.
yet it's as close to the door as anybody could park.
It's just if that's important or not,
Where's the bicycle for this building? Bicycle park.
right out front.
So there's not any by employee entrance or anything like that, it's just.
Right now, they
Public.
just have one open. Yeah,
I didn't even look at that.
I think so. I don't know if it's been installed yet.
It's both. It is.
Biggest reason I brought this up was the maximum, right? So Project Timberwolf, it's based on parking spaces, and so Project Timberwolf had 400 parking spaces or something, so they need like 28 bike racks or 22 bike racks, something silly. I think if we just peel the maximum number out of here, I would be okay with it.
Well, yeah, I'm fine with that. And I mean, all of a sudden they've got lots of employees riding their bikes to work. Go ahead one.
Yeah, if REI shows up, yeah, you're probably gonna have more than 2 bike racks. But they're gonna adjust that accordingly because that's their business model, right?
Yeah, they're gonna have to accommodate. You said we have a maximum on that ordinance?
Well, it's based on the number of parking spaces, it's 5% of parking spaces. So when you have 400 parking spaces, it bumps it up. If we just tell it, hey, you gotta have 2 bike racks or bicycle
A minimum
or
of
2
two
bicycles.
something,
figure it
yeah. Then it's
out.
just a space for somebody.
Bike parking of 2 for multifamily and maybe a little bit higher number for commercial.
I think it goes per, I mean, the Project Timberwolf's the exceptions, like Jim said, and you got 400 spots there, right? I mean, if we have 20 spots, are we gonna mandate that they have 2, or are we gonna mandate, I mean, it's gonna be kind of a, I mean, you gotta give and take a little bit with this. I mean, the business that's going in,
We could modify the code to not include spaces that are being utilized for delivery vans. If they can show that on their site plan.
I mean, the Dollar Tree is gonna use more bike racks than Jim's gonna use, right? I mean, so at some point, you're never gonna accommodate, by writing a code to accommodate everything, you're never gonna be able to do it, because every business type is different for the amount of bikes that could potentially be there.
Like that.
Which might be the best one, because,
Or encourage bicycle rack in the installation.
Don't ride a bike.
Or are you saying just kind of take it as on an individual
I think
basis and see what the commercial or residential development,
maybe do like Jim said, and just mandate that the bike rack has to be present for 3 bikes, 5 bikes, whatever it is, and then at the end of the day, if you've got something like Project Timberwolf that goes on, it comes here, okay, you know, we vote on it, because again, the city mandate that we need X amount of bike racks for X amount of spots, it's not gonna fit every business type. I mean, I run a manufacturing business, somebody that runs a retail business is gonna need more than I do. I mean, so it's not, I just think at parking spots, it's just a generic for it. Just put your bike rack in and be done with it.
If it's full or you need more, if it's school, likely you're gonna need more at the elementary school than you are at the manufacturing facility.
Who's the right one?
final?
And per,
Okay, I will come back with something.
Does that give you enough?
Sure. It may not be accurate in the way, but they'll come out.
Okay. Anybody have anything further on that?
We require every business to have a bike rack.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's really what the problematic part is. I mean, I agree, it's just the maximum, right? We don't,
Yeah, that was my big, I mean,
it's just.
I personally had an issue with my particular business, I will tell you that. Just no one pulls their Honda to my ever, I have no retail business, so there's no reason to ever come to my business on a bicycle, and it's on the back of your car when you came here, but I have a unique situation, and I'm not saying it's a code for my business, but to take a maximum off, we probably Timberwolf or similar, right? There's gonna be other big manufacturing or large commercial, whatever. A new pick and save shows up, has a huge parking lot. And again, yeah, you might put all these in, I don't know, buy 3 eggs, unless you got some chickens, but what else you can carry in the grocery department on your bicycle? Not a lot.
Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of wire baskets on the bikes anymore.
So, no.
It's not silent. Everyone's your flavor, Joe.
Hanging on,
For
section.
me, this is just
Go ahead.
my comment, I guess, is that bike racks may be a requirement,
based on staff recommendation. You know, I mean, how much does staff want to have the ability to just manage that on your own? You know, I mean, it's like, where you can decide then what's appropriate for that particular, you know, I like it being on the checklist of things to be on a site plan,
Yeah.
But I'm-
People don't need them. Yeah, we get that.
but I'm, so like I say, I'm not real sure how you legislate that you have a need to show bike racks on a site plan, subject to staff review and approval. That's kind of where I'm at with the thing. And where you can actually
For
talk to,
providing space for it.
Right.
Because in some situations, I mean, the building may change to something else. in the
Right.
future, That could potentially move it.
That's a good point too.
yeah, so like I say, I think it's important that somebody that's developing a plan understands that there may be a requirement for a bike rack, but I'm just comfortable with letting staff do what makes sense. And when you actually, and when you talk about a business changing, you get the opportunity to revisit some of those things before you issue a new occupancy permit for a business, you know, so a wholesale business goes out and a retail business comes in.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
make sure that the parking needs meet.
Right.
So, well, I mean, it's usually after the fact, because some of the landlords don't necessarily come to us. We find it out through the fire department going or when a guy is driving by it and seeing it's there. So sometimes it's after the fact, but yeah, we make them do the occupancy permit, zoning permit, and then we check that. Valley checks garbage, and at that time, it's usually how we catch some of the older ones.
So I really feel that that's where the responsibility would be in the right hands, so to speak, where the staff can make that decision based on the input from the occupant and come to something that makes sense. And we certainly want to consider bike racks, especially when you talk about apartments and that sort of thing, but what is the right number? You know, and it really comes down to how many units, right? And like you say, in the case of a school, well, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So like I say, I think it's important that you have the authority to expect that there be something, and then the responsibility to negotiate with whoever the applicant is for what makes sense. So how do you write that out? I guess
We'll try.
okay.
I like that idea though. I agree with you, bro. It's a good idea.
Well, even multifamily, right? So Steve says he doesn't bike. The known bike has no interest in riding a bicycle. So you have 14 families of Steve moving your multifamily. You really need a bike rack? No, but when the 14 Steve families move out and you get 14 Jim families move in that, hey, I really like my bicycle. I need someplace to park that thing. And I don't have a bike rack, right? So that's where absolutely let the staff use that. Use their moral compass.
You bike me, that's it, for sure.
What's that?
You bike me, that's it, for sure.
Mark?
New opportunity.
That was a poor attempt at humor.
Just for the point of the discussions, if you look at Steve's point and you see how specific they are and how many things they mandate related to the type of rack and whatnot, I think the concerns there are that if you provide a bike rack in a college environment like point is, and a lot of those kids have e-bikes and very expensive bikes, that if you provide a rack that isn't something that gives them some peace of mind that it's going to be there when they come back out of the building, I think that's the concerns that Point has. So when you talk about just having a generic, I mean, they go into even more, I mean, how far from the building it can be, a whole bunch of other things, which, you know, whatever, that's the quote. But I guess what I'm saying is, for the flip side is, you ride a new $4,000 e-bike up to your shop, just for argument's sake, I mean, I know you said you have no retail, but if I came out to your business on a $4,000 e-bike and I looked around, and if there isn't a place, that would certainly be a deciding factor on whether I came in and locked the bike up. I did. So I think we should at least in the discussion, I'm not advocating a position on it, but we have to take that into consideration too, that if you're trying to develop along the corridor, we're trying to be more respectful and open to those people that do bike or whatever. We're not talking about $100 or $150 bike like we might in the old days think of anyway. It is to them, it's their primary vehicle, maybe, especially in the college environment it is. So that's why there's such a contrast to Stephen's points that she pulled up, and I think that's what they're trying to address there is, they want it to be visible, they want everyone to know that they can come in, they want it to be lockable so that when they come back out, all the parts of the bike are still there. And so for whatever reason, I don't think we should totally lose sight that if you're going to mandate it, maybe having some kind of standard, if the U shape in the concrete is the standard or whatever, I have no idea on the cost, but I mean, I could understand why someone would be comfortable or not comfortable if they came up to a building and would say, I'm not going to get my bike outside there. I used to bike a lot. I don't anymore. I'm not advocating the position. I'm just saying from that mindset, I can understand why someplace like a college town, UWC's point, would certainly want to have the strict things that's in there. So from a zoning perspective, I'm just saying from a new building perspective, to have a minimum of 2 or whatever, if it's as simple as them just having one of those U-shaped ones in front, I guess is my point. That might be enough for someone who has an expensive bike. If that's kind of the standard, that might not be asking a new building owner too much to have one of those there. It counts as 2, if it's never used, what's the difference? But it's still we want our residents to have some comfort in being able to ride a bike to an establishment and be able to park it and go inside. That's why I asked what was here, because honestly, I didn't even look when I walked in the building. But if a new, 20-something moves to the area and wants to stop here to ask at Village Hall something, is there a place they could lock a $4,000 e-bike outside and feel comfortable coming in and talking to somebody in the building? I just thought it might come up in the building, new facility design discussion. So that's my 2 cents. I just want to put it up there.
Good enough?
Yep.
All right, moving on. Letter B, amendments to parking regulations.
So this, so it also, this was part of our project in Mobile, and essentially was due to the delivery trucks. So we don't have kind of a general catch-all. I did just some brief research, and I think this was in City of Wausau too, where they had kind of catch-all for uses not listed. So we could do something like that, or I could look at doing something specific to kind of more of a transportation type use, like semis and delivery trucks and things like that. So I didn't know what direction you guys wanted me to go before. So that's why I wanted to kind of see if you just wanted something general, or if you wanted us to create a specific use.
I saw it being a use-based thing, like Timberwolf, like Langley's, like Crystal Finishing. Their business type requires essentially 2 cars for a person, right? So it's a delivery car and the car that you got there, or your bicycle, right? So you have to have 2 parking spots for that use. Whereas if this were whatever, Target, you just need the 1 parking spot for the customer and the 1 parking spot for the employee. Or the convoluted advance up front. So Timberwolf has, I think, more parking for their delivery vehicles than the employees, right? Close to the same, like 180 and 211 or something, right? They're close, but that's a perfect example of, they might not have all 211 delivery vans on the road every day, but so there's someplace to park them. And so they shouldn't be penalized or have to play some silly game to fit into the box here when the plan comes in front of Jennifer and her staff. Or the engineers reading it, trying to make their project conform to what our standard is, and they can't.
So you're saying it should be use specific?
I say it should be use specific, right? So
I would-
McDonald's would be different than that.
I would agree.
Almost to exempt those delivery business use vehicle. Like for your business, do the same kind of thing, right? You rely your trucks on park inside, but like, if it's outside, right, you guys aren't driving those things home every day, right? But you still have to have them there.
Some of you know what you're saying.
Mhm.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Just want to talk about chicken.
All right, next up, creation of chicken regulations on residential zone properties.
That's your.
Yes, so right now, chickens are allowed at RR2 and 5. Chickens and ducks, actually, you can have up to 8. And I just throw a code in there now, so the performance standards are there. But kind of like I said in there, since I started, I've had at least 25 phone calls from individuals in the village, wondering if they have chickens on single family, small and large lots. Many of which I sent the steps on how to apply for a code change to allow for it. To date, I haven't got anything back, but kind of like I said here, I've been working with individuals named Brian Corporate. He is looking at applying, and he is planning to do so after this meeting officially, but we kind of had a discussion and we thought it would be best to kind of bring it to you guys first as a discussion and kind of get an understanding of where you guys stand with it and any concerns that we might be able to address when drafting the ordinance. So I spent some time looking at other communities and kind of what they do for backyard chickens, which I provided an Excel data sheet. On the packet, it's kind of small, I was doing that was the only way I could get it to format correctly. On top of that, I put in a couple of questions that I kind of want you guys to consider, and I did have a meeting with Ryan 2 weeks ago where we kind of discussed the questions ourselves. And in red is kind of what Ryan was looking at, his answers to the questions. Anything in blue was specifically from me, which I think was just the last question. But there's a bunch of links I put in there in the Excel sheet, which is all the other communities and kind of what they do for chickens. So I don't know if you have a chance to take a look at that. One that I found was Marshfield, who's actually going through the process as well. And they just had a survey for the residents out there, and it was kind of cool to see the feedback they got and the approvals and disapprovals of the people who live in Marshfield. So I thought it might be good to do something similar in terms of putting out a survey for the residents to kind of get an understanding of where the residents stand in terms of wanting chickens and not wanting chickens. I also included a letter that Ryan submitted to me, which is part of the application, but it's just thought if you could throw that in there. So if you have any other questions, I've been talking with Brian a lot and done a lot of research on this. So the draft ordinance, it's not a draft ordinance, it's more or less pre-draft ordinance of, I kind of took our questions and what Ryan's visions are for this, and I kind of pre-drafted something that can be shown in red. And a lot of that can change, a lot of that can be up for debate. For example, what zoning districts can be allowed. how many chickens. Ryan has 4 chickens. A lot of communities are 6 chickens, 4 chickens, 5 chickens. So there's a lot to talk about here. The route in which needs to be taken, I guess, to get an ordinance in place.
Who is gonna enforce this? And do we have time to do that?
So,
I'm just asking, I'm not trying to be.
Chicken cops out here.
so we do have to deal with it occasionally already, and we have for a number of years. There are people that have them, and we find out by complaints, typically because the neighbor doesn't like the other one, or there's a rooster situation. We've got a few of those. And it's an animal issue, so we would refer it to the humane officer through EMPD, which is also the city of Wausau's. She deals with the one at the city, and so she's already talked to Ryan, and she doesn't have issues with chickens. So we would basically refer it to her, but it would still come in here as staff having to deal with it in some way. You may have, depending on how it's done, if there's licensing that could affect, it just depends, I guess, and if it's a one-time permit, or if it's an annual license, the licenses go through the clerk's office, so there's a lot of different ways you can do this, so we could have lots of involvement, or we could have very little, depending on how the ordinance is written.
Do you mind if I?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I guess my concern with this, I had a very bad experience with a prior team who, when I lived on Hewitt, which it wasn't legally allowed, and shame, I could have called soon, but I had a situation where he thought he could do it. Instead of building a chicken coop, he used a little Tykes playhouse with fencing around it. And when it was not cleaned regularly, so when it got up to 85, 90 degrees, it stunk. And it floated right in my backyard to the point where we couldn't even sit back there. So that's why I'm asking, how do we enforce this? Because I don't want to put this code in, and then we have a bunch of neighbors who are living in quarter-acre lots that suddenly have to smell
So
chickens from 2
right
houses
now,
away.
we send a letter saying it's not allowed. I mean, we've had that, we've had issues over more towards Clark's. We had somebody a number of years back that had them underneath like a truck topper, and they were always on the Mountain Bay Trail. So we would get people that would call there because there was chickens running around on the trail. That was also on, what is it? What's the other one over off of Ryan Street? That little short dead end street. The duplexes are, somebody had them back there. Lane. So there was some there, they were on the trail. So, I mean, we have that right now, and it's just easy to say you can't have them, and send them a letter kind of thing, and take care of them that way. That's kind of how we addressed it over the years. We did have, I don't know when it was, but we had somebody request it 5, 6, 10 years ago, I don't know, a young girl. And the planning commission turned it down, at that point. Just because they didn't want to deal with it on the smaller lots. And then you allow it in the larger areas, but yeah, so I know Cronin letter did allow it. My understanding they don't anymore. They went through a whole conditional use process with theirs, so that was something that came before the planning commission. I think it was an annual fee, I'm not sure, but I know that I think when I said they had stopped doing it there. So, but Madison, Stevens Point, a lot of the city of Wisconsin Rapids, I mean, they all have these ordinances. So,
Are you guys getting a water request for this one lately?
yes, so we started getting it back when the egg prices were high, and we just kind of said, well, no, it's not allowed. And just kind of gave we didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, so we gave the, here, you want to spend the time and the money to, craft the ordinance or give us some ideas and take it to the planning commission and ask, then do that. We gave that to this gentleman, and well, that was probably March.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was a while ago, and they just came back like that he was willing to do that, but I don't know. I mean, it's been sporadic. I mean,
There's some weeks that I have
They could be the
Two calls
same
every-
person. There should be people that call.
There's
like,
people
every
that
few months.
call and check in, see if anything's changed or not.
And 15,000 people,
How many applicants?
yeah, I don't know how many people would actually have chickens.
Max is 200,000 people.
Yeah, just, hang on, just, where's the, go ahead.
These are just some thoughts I had. We allow dogs in Weston. And I sat back and said, public safety standpoint, dogs bite people and occasionally kill people. And I said, chickens, I guess maybe they peck people. I don't know that they kill anyone. So just from a public safety standpoint, we allow dogs, but we don't allow chickens. Which is more dangerous? I'd vote dogs. I then looked at it and said, okay, people keep their dogs outside. Not everyone, but people do. And I don't know what level of problems we have with having them enforced on what they keep them in. You know, but, and then I sat back and went, how do we handle, well, we require a license for a dog if you're going to have one. So it would seem reasonable if we're going to allow a chicken or chickens would have a license, some type of an annual fee. I mean, I believe that's right now, whether it's a dog or a cat, you have an annual fee, right? And then I also thought about the noise and I said, well, if you eliminate roosters, how many times do I hear dogs barking in my neighborhood? Every single day. Every day. How many times, how loud are chickens relative to dogs, decibel wise? I'm gonna just say common sense says dogs, so.
I think chickens are more.
Yeah.
I actually have some near me and I can hear them every time I walk. by.
Okay, I'm not sure how loud, I guess, I just said that, the dogs, you can hear a block away. I don't know that, but, so those are just some thoughts I had. I mean, I recognize in the odor thing, would I want to live and smell that? No, but if they kept it clean,
You have the same thing with a dog.
but you can have the same thing with a dog, right? If they don't pick up all the,
Which we get called on that.
which you get calls on that, right? So that, I just went through in my head, those are just some thoughts I had as I thought my way through this. I'm not saying I'm in favor of having chickens, but I did say, boy, if somebody held it up and said, well, you allow dogs, geez. I mean, dogs as being much more dangerous, generally louder and probably if they don't pick up just as bad from a, the excrement standpoint. So I'll just throw those comments out. Well,
Yeah, from an enforcement standpoint, chickens are very low on the enforcement totem pole. If we were to do a chicken crackdown, we probably.
Let the chicken down.
I'm sure there's at least 50 residences that we would find easily with existing chickens that people haven't complained about. We only send out letters if somebody complains about it to inform the resident. So.
What does a residential building permit cost for a shed in the village of Weston?
Depends on the size.
Okay, so to make it worth your and Travis's time and to also help the village out, why don't you put some sort of code in or something that, I mean, there's got to be a coop inspector or something. So that's what WAS does. And you guys, my buddy just did this. He's in the city of Wassa. I think he's allowed to have 4 chickens. They permit to have the coop, and then it had to meet some sort of inspection, for lack of better terms, for him to have chickens in it. I mean, I understand your guys' time is valuable, but why not put a price on it that says, just like every other building permit will own, that this is what it has to be, and then you have an annual for having chickens. And just, and if they're gonna do it, you might as well make some money on it, right, or try to cover costs on it.
That's kind of where my thought was. I mean, you guys have enough going on. So when I asked, how do we enforce this? I don't want to be a situation where you have someone that's complaining and it goes 2 months before someone gets over there and do anything about it.
And so it would be an accessory use or accessory structure permit is probably how it would be regulated. You could totally put a cap on the size. I think the lowest size window is like $40 for the permit. So there's some.
How many accessory structures do you allow on a property currently?
Well, it depends. So you get 1 yard shed, 1 detached garage, and 1 gazebo. So we could add into that
Or you can have 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
So, and then there's the maximum square footage on single family small of 800 for a total square footage.
I think it's gotta be regulated because exactly you brought up, Steve, with your neighbor, chickens living under a topper. I mean, at what point does it become inhumane to have chickens living in something like that?
I don't think people view chickens the way they do dogs either. No. People tend to view dogs more, well, I didn't see the 5 o'clock news today. Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, my quarterback was on the news this weekend. Yes. So, go ahead.
Shame on me.
No, it's a hotly debated topic. We just happen to find it at the right time to choose up. So reporter work.
Can I ask you about your experience with the noise as far as the clucking? Was that something you noticed?
It's not so much the noise. Occasionally you hear it, if they started bickering or fighting amongst each other, but otherwise, there wasn't a rooster there. So that wasn't a problem, but it was more, truthfully, it was the smell. I mean, when it got to be 85, 90 degrees, that smell would just come right into my back. It made it to the point where it was like, it made me want to be sick just sitting back there.
Well, the reason I ask is the noise, would the ordinary noise ordinance apply to this? Well, that's what worries me, but they're putting these, I mean, some of them are supposed, in some of the communities, is 3 feet from the lot line.
Yeah.
So the decibel used to be, whatever the decibel was taken at the
It's
lot
gotta be
line.
pretty high, so we're not gonna- it's pretty
So
warm.
that's why I just wondered, is that also going to open that door to someone saying, well, the noise I can hear it on my property, literally standing on it, which they could, and if it's only 3 or 10 feet away, whatever the noise is, it certainly would be audible. How high, I don't know, if it's lighting, it'd probably be louder, but the normal clucking, I just don't have a sense as to how far that carries. But when if there's no shrubs, no fence or anything, I mean, you're getting it, and I think in some places where I've seen locations, they tend to put them in the farthest corner away from their house, which
Because
is
they don't want to
closest
hear
the
them smell
neighbor's
it.
house. Which is why I wondered, if you sleep with your windows open, it says 25 feet. Well, if across 75 feet in an open yard at night with still wind, I have a feeling if they're clucking, you're gonna hear them clucking. I mean, wide open spaces are pretty, in a no sound environment, any sound, let alone some type of regular clucking, is certainly something you probably noticed. Maybe not any different than bullfrogs in a pond, but you're still gonna have a noise. So, and then if I can, let me ask one question, staff. Do you have much experience with the premises registration number and the folks down there for anything in the village currently? Because I mean, it's mandated that if you have poultry, you have to submit for this premises registration.
Right, and I'm sure.
Under state law
many
since
people have never
2004.
done that.
And I doubt that they do, and so I don't know how they keep the database. I don't know if the community, because what I was thinking is into enforcement and stuff, it's the same thing under the general licenses, is how do you know, if people are complying with the state and registering, and they have 50, they show there's 50 of them in the village, but only 10 people came in to pay their annual or whatever their fee, what their licensing fee. I mean, do you ever, do you have a way you can make sure you know how many are on each list, and then who's supposed to tell the other? I mean, if you find out now as a municipality, you have people and you tell them to register, do you have to follow up to find out if they're in the state database? I mean, there are a lot of things related to the licensing which all make sense, and you're trying to cover the expenses of staff, but it still raises the question about how does it actually work? I went on the website and I didn't see any public access to the database, but I didn't spend a lot of time there. But I was curious to see that. We used to have horses and all of them. We no longer had horses at the time this new statute was passed in 2004, but it just was curious to me. I didn't know that if you had horses today, even a horse, you're supposed to register under this law that was passed. So poultry, which are the ducks, everything is, basically, they want to know the livestock. It's broadly defined as livestock in the state, and it's for the cases of if there are breakouts of some type of disease or some issue, they can start tracing it back to where did it come from, who needs to be concerned about it, and for like Marathon County Health officers and those folks to say, well, these are the folks that we have in our database. You want to make sure you check with them related to the bird flu or whatever might be going around. So anyway, I don't know if you guys have dealt with that in any other context with any other animals or anything. Because I'm just curious how the database works. I mean, somebody down there making a database, how's it being used? It's a 3-year, the state, when you register, it costs nothing to register. You can do it online. And it is a location-specific license. So if you bought my house and I had a license, until it expires, it's still at that location. So if I had the horses, even if you didn't have them, you with the state, as far as they know, unless you terminated it, it wouldn't terminate until it expired, and it's every 3 years is the renewal. You can again renew online. So if we're going to go into the licensing of the chickens, I think we should also know how that state system works and what that means. Because I was more concerned about if you're taking in a license, who's checking to make sure everybody's got the same names on the same list? Even though it doesn't cost at the state, are you supposed to then check to make sure that they register with the state? I don't know.
Those are all very good points.
Well, there is the database manager listed on the website that we can call.
I sent him an email this weekend, just a generic at the
There's
info.
just a
He didn't get a response, so. But I was curious, I just asked, is it a public access database or isn't it?
Dave?
Are we entertaining that if we would do this, and the number was 4, but then somebody came in and said, well, but I'd like a couple of geese or a couple of ducks, the number's still 4, or could they have 4 of each?
That would depend on how the ordinance is crafted.
And what about peacocks and guinea hens and every other thing that's got a feather?
Depending on how you frame it.
Because I think, for me personally, and I sympathize because I have had those experiences as well. You could have the best chicken coop in the world, and if it's in a residential area, when we have days like this, the odor is unacceptable. And they do make noise, they fight. You'll have a dominant one and they'll be beating up the other ones, and I wouldn't want to go down that road. Yeah. That's how I feel about it.
I think Mark brought up a very good point with the diseases that they carry too. I mean, when you start mixing humans and birds like that in a closely kind of tight area, you're opening yourself up for other issues, I would think. Maybe I'm wrong.
I just think our staff's got way enough to do without going down this road.
Joe, you say something?
Yeah, so we've got chickens on the farm, and they're, a couple 100 yards away from my house. I can hear the rooster, pretty plainly, especially in the morning, but the chickens, the noise from them is really pretty minimal, and they typically are making the most noise when they're actually laying eggs, which is a daylight issue. And once it becomes dusk, they go in their coop, and it's pretty quiet. So I don't think from a noise, it wouldn't be a significant noise problem. I don't think, but some of the issues though with the smell, yeah, the chicken coop stinks. It's probably less than 100 feet from Katrina's house, and the prevailing wind out of the north or northwest. It hasn't been significant, but like you say, on a day like today, yeah, you can't be sitting on a patio downwind from that. So, so is it all small lots or is it,
Well, right now, we allow them in the larger, we just don't in
Yeah.
single family or single family large lot. So the small and the large lot, we don't. It's the RR2, RR5, the RM, which is what Katrina's is.
yeah, so single family and single family large, what's the difference between those?
They're the size, it's basically size.
Square footage, how many square feet is it, Jeff? Yeah, 10,000 square feet, 20,000 square.
Yeah, so pretty small.
They can be pretty small.
Yeah, I mean, I think Steve said quarter acre lot.
Well, and his
that's- yeah.
actually was the old, all those on the tabby are 15,000 square foot minimums, because that's what our single family used to be.
Mine was a little bigger than that. where I
Yeah, so a
was.
lot, some of them are bigger out there,
Mhm.
but that was what the minimum was. So if you get into Inner Springs now, some of them could be closer to the 10,000 square foot.
I think, yeah, how close some of those homes are. I mean, look at the one, was it Misty Pines? Like Crystal? It's tight.
Yeah, that one was done in really close too.
Just a food for thought, I was thinking, you know, if you have 10,000 square foot lot, if you allow 2 chickens per 10,000 square feet. So if you have an acre lot, you could have 8 chickens, if you have 10,000, you only have 2 chickens. And if you had a license for them, and tell them right up front, if we get complaints on it, their license is only good for a year, it's not gonna be renewed. They gotta keep it, so it doesn't smell and whatever.
There's an idea. Should max it though. Instead of, I mean, make it a max of 4 and maybe every 5,000 square feet, you get 1 chicken.
Whatever.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways you do it.
But to your point, you don't want 4 chickens, 4 geese, 4 ducks.
Yeah, where's the start?
You end up with an argument.
Once you go down that road,
Well, and then,
Not with how dry it's
and
been.
then in the ordinance, you're gonna have to specify what kind of animal, right? What kind of bird.
Feathered animals.
Yeah, because you could have 4 ostriches, that gets pretty big.
But you would not want 4 peacocks.
No,
they're,
They're
Yeah, you
four-
have to think
Well, those are loud too, that's different, right? That's, I mean, peacocks are as loud as roosters are.
What's the
I was just gonna
consensus?
say, we wanna just take a vote on who wants, I mean, is it, who thinks it's right, who thinks.
Are you looking for, I guess, what are you looking for, Jen? Do you want us to, do you want to have like a nod as far as what direction everybody wants us to go?
One,
here?
if we should proceed, we're gonna get this application, so we're either working on an ordinance that we have to bring to you, a draft ordinance, I mean, it's still gonna have to go to public hearing, so there's still gonna be time to flush it out, but just thoughts in somewhat direction, because there's a lot of, like Aaron said, a lot of different ways you
So
can
this-
handle this.
This draft ordinance has to come to us because he's paying.
Yeah,
the fee
it's,
to-
well, and it's, yeah, he's gonna apply for it based off of what happens, I guess, and
And he's on a single small.
he's on, yeah.
We're by the high school.
great.
Under 10 or over 10? It's over 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's like a half acre lot.
He's right next to the softball field park there and, yeah, that's right.
Well, if it's me, it's a no. I would leave the ordinance as it's personally.
I would agree with that. I'm not in favor of this.
Jim? I would say if you do it, there has to be like you had said, strict enforcement of a 1 year deal, and if you complain to whichever, or employee, and you're not eligible to do it again, period, at 163 any street. And then I think too, it shouldn't just be a lot size, because we have some unique residential site plans, if you will. So the way that the neighborhood is configured, or my lot, or your lot, or whichever, the only place for me to put a chicken coop is right outside your bedroom window. It might meet the setbacks, and it might meet the 5 chickens for 75,000 square feet or whatever, but that's not the best place to put them.
Well, I remember what that is, you're gonna see a site plan, but you're not gonna see a neighbor's site plan, so you.
Right, so that, I mean, that's where I think it should be. I think staff should have some input on that. They can see that, you can pull it up on Google Maps or on GIS and see, hey, oh, yeah, it looks right on your site, but Steve's your neighbor, and that's not gonna work for Steve.
So are you requesting like conditional by conditional use?
I think it
permit for
should
the
be on a
first
case
one?
by case for everyone. Like you should be able to see that and say, hey, you want to put your chicken coop, okay, we're gonna put. Okay, good, it's gonna go here, yeah, that's not a good spot.
Well, I
because-
don't know if you can, I don't know if you can craft an ordinance like that.
So it has to be closer to your house than it is the neighbor's house, no matter how close to the lot line.
Communities require 25 feet from any residential building.
Well, right, so like you said, if it's close to your house, closer to your house than the lot line, or
So
than the
you
neighbors.
want, so I guess maybe my suggestion, or we can go through this thing. That the questions he has is, you probably want it as a conditional use permit for the first time, because then the neighbors get notified. So then the neighbor gets to look at where the food would go, because they would have to supply plans and where they're putting this. And then it has to come here, and that's the only way we can notify.
How much is a conditional use?
You could put it as whatever you want. The conditional use is 250 for a hearing. That's what we have. That's everything.
Per person.
But you could do it based off of whatever you wanted. Plus they could have the building permit for the chicken coop for them to go out and look at it. Your guys' time for it to come. Typically, if something's coming here, it's $100.
By the time they're done, they should just buy the egg, right?
I was just about to say.
It's what are you looking for? So, you
Just being
know,
honest.
I don't personally want to be determining where a chicken coop is.
No,
I'm telling
I
you.
get it, I get it, because
So
no
that's why
matter
I'm
what,
saying that.
yeah, I get it. I wouldn't want to either, because no matter what, you're gonna piss the neighbor out.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's keep flying right.
I was on the fence on this one for quite a while, to be honest with you. I can see merits to both sides of it. I was curious as to how many problems it causes for communities that have implemented it, which I didn't have that ever, but when I hear people say that, because I wouldn't want to live next to something that stinks. Now, is that the exception or the norm? I mean, because there's always an exception to somebody that doesn't take care of anything, right? We run into those problems constantly, but.
Well, there were, if I'm understanding correctly, the girls softball are gonna be right next to this. So every girls softball game from here on could potentially smell a bunch of chickens right next door. Is that what we want?
Yeah.
It's not what I want.
Joe, what do you think?
I'm not much of a rules or regulation guy, but the problem that we have is there are a whole bunch of people in town that are doing it already. And this guy has come forward, trying to do it legally. And he's trying to do something that many people say, well, I'm gonna do this until somebody squawks, right, or whatever. So I'm not necessarily in favor of having chickens, but the reality is that.
Well, that's an enforcement issue, not.
Right, so for me, I could support it as long as there was a way to intelligently enforce it. That's, and then get a handle on what we already have going on that is illegal, but nobody's saying anything. So I'd like to see further review, I guess is where I'm.
I struggle with the size, that's all, the size of the lot, and especially if it's in a neighborhood with sizes of lots, that same size. So that's, otherwise, I understand and I respect the guy for coming forward and being honest, and willing to pay for a permit and work with an ordinance. But I do struggle with the size of the lot and the smell. That's all. So.
Sure. I agree with both the two last comments.
No.
I wouldn't want to buy next door to me either.
Mark, any more?
I don't think I have any more. I think You had highlighted, if I could just ask one more thing, you had highlighted one of the questions, should we conduct a survey to get residential or residents' feedback? I mean, you got the board, you know, is this that wide open of a policy point decision that needs to be made? That, would a public hearing be enough? Would it not be enough? I don't know, because again, it's one of those things, you know how many people attend public hearings, unless it's really a hot button. No, very few people attend.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a hot button. It was on Channel 9 News at 5, 6, and 4, I think. So,
On 17.
so I don't, you know, like I said, I'm not sure where it falls in the scheme of things, priority wise.
I guess what I would add to that, Mark, would be is if it would be a resident's feedback, I think you should put pros and cons, what do you think to get this, whatever. But the cons should be some of the things we discussed, because some people may say, hey, yeah, why not have some chickens? And not think that their neighbor's not gonna clean the damn thing up, and now they're pissed off because it smells and they can't use their backyard, you know? I think we need to definitely address that if we do send a reference card out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's my point. If the policy is made by the board's elected. And so they're newly elected in just in the cycle where things are now as far as an election cycle. So, I mean, somebody's got to set the policy, and do you want the residents to have direct input on the topic like this, or is the board comfortable making a decision? That's not what the plan commission.
That's a very good point.
Is faced at the point. So the staff is asking the plan commission, because if there's ordinance or a draft ordinance or a public hearing, they need to put stuff together to do it. And so they're asking for the parameters of, if we're going to draft it, because someone's going to ask us to amend the code, what should we do? We really aren't setting the policy on it. We're trying to give them the parameters to put it together, to go forward to the ultimate decision makers we choose go forward. So, you know, I hope that makes sense, but I mean, you know, that's really where we're at. And the look on Jennifer and Aaron's face is they're just trying to figure out what are they going to do. They know something's going to happen. You know, so after the meeting tonight, they have to have some direction, because someone's going to ask for it to come forward. And so that's really what we're trying to do tonight. I think that's what we're trying to do, is to give them the guidance and let the policy be done by the policymakers down the road. So that doesn't hurt the conversation. I guess that's the point I would make now.
Randy, anything like that?
I would leave it as is. I'm in favor of small lots, and I think it'd be an enforcement issue. And once the chickens are there, it's hard to get the chickens to.
I think enough for now.
So Aaron, I think Trina might board those chickens for them if they wanted.
Yeah, what if you did a community chicken garden?
At Kennedy Park.
No, you can set it up, Joe's Disco Center, we're not doing anything with that anyway, so.
Jimmy, got enough space by the shop there?
Yeah. There's some institutional.
Inviting predators to come from outside the village limits, because we got people bringing chickens in now.
And we have NBC here, they catch a predator.
Violators.
You got CBS, NBC, you got the whole alphabet.
We beat that up enough, they're really good.
Yeah, I mean, Jen, what's your, in here, what's your feel?
I heard you don't want it as a conditional use. And that is about it, because you're split, so,
Who's split? I heard a lot more names than.
right. But he's gonna request it, so we're gonna have to put something together, I guess, if he's supposed to request it. And ultimately, it'll be the board's decision.
It's gotta come back here though before it goes to the board.
Yeah, well, it requires a public hearing, so I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe what we'll do, there's a newsletter going out in September. We can have something so that it's maybe an October meeting or something, so that it can at least be noticed in there, so that people know. I don't know if you want that or not, and that's something I'll talk to the board about next week, I guess.
Yeah, it might not be a bad idea to get the board, the rest of the boards.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I mean, some of it is me kind of heading off if it's kind of a lost cause. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we do have a lot of other stuff that we are working on. So that was some of the, why he put that together and had the questions there.
Well, that's why I asked the question. You get the impression that it's a lost cause.
I guess so, yeah.
Aaron?
Ryan said all he wants is a fair hearing, really. It's what he did before.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I mean, it sounds like a lot of you guys are no for it. so-
Well, I think outside of just without a fair hearing and explaining to Ryan that, you know, I wouldn't have thought about that. That's why I thought it was really important to look through a survey. I would have never thought about what Steve went through, right? And there are neighbors that, and you're right, Roy, there's people that just don't take care of stuff, period.
Right, yeah.
And it's
we deal
not,
with a lot of that.
it's just, it's not fair to the neighbor, you know?
is Ryan online?
I don't think so.
No.
He wasn't planning.
But
I
I
mean,
mean, part of
Ryan
me too wishes that he would have been here too, because he might have provided some other insight that we're not, you know.
Ryan certainly has provided me a lot of insight on what he wants. He brings up a good point where he's from Madison, there's 200,000 people down there. And in Madison, there's 200 people with chickens, you know, so it's like, how many are we really going to get here in Weston? Kimberly, for example, had an ordinance put in 2016. I was looking at an article published in 2020. They had no applicants for it, which
But
obviously isn't going to be the.
But I understand that it's the people that have them that are gonna make the neighbors not real happy either, though. That's the only problem.
Right, and there's things you can, and looking at other ordinances from other communities, they have pretty strict guidelines. They have, you know, pre-application inspection to ensure that the coop meets setbacks and that it's not just some rickety dink little
Yeah,
log cabin,
but what about cleaning up the poop?
you know,
And who's gonna be the poop police?
who's the poop police of the dogs and
Yeah,
other animals now.
no, I understand.
Send it to,
I mean, and
I
ultimately,
do want to note that the main officer, Ashley, who handles it in Wausau, is more than happy to come in here and talk about her experience with the chicken over in Wausau. Ryan told me that today, so I wanted to put that out there.
you have a lot of complaints that are going, you guys do the,
We
I
got
forwarded
2
them all to
complaints on
Ashley.
chickens just
for
over the
the
weekend.
dogs?
You got how many?
2 complaints on
What about
chickens.
dogs?
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Was it a noise or a smell?
We don't have,
Or you have them and you shut them down? Undocumented.
It's out of Annabelle.
So our most recent complaint came in from the end of Camel Street. It's a very large piece of property, but it's still zoned single family small.
5 acre.
Right. So
North end or south end?
it's a south end of Camel, right above Camel, of course. So,
Oh, okay.
It's north of 29.
and the biggest complaint is the roosters growing from 3:30 in the morning until 10:00 at night. And, but other than that, if they didn't have roosters, the lot's so big, I don't think anybody would know. that they have them.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah,
we're
there's a
looking-
few anomaly lots throughout the village. There's 2 5-acre parcels right there. One of them has an actual farm, like a farm.
I think so. I think we had 60.
Travis says something's gonna get to, so Secretary Parker should be a smith something.
So I get it, Aaron, I really do, but I think I'd feel terrible for you if you were the neighbor and the guy wasn't cleaning it up. You know, that's my only concern, I guess. That is absolutely the only concern I have with it. Outside of that, I think it's a good thing. I think it's good for kids to see that. But it's the horror story of, and who polices it, you know. Outside of that, I'd be in favor of just the size of the property.
Great. Should we move on? I might want to talk about chickens for another.
I was looking for
They taste good.
All right. D, creation of electric vehicle charging station regulations referred from the Board of Trustees.
So the reason this one came up, was because Safer found out that Virtual Talents was looking at putting them in their underground parking. As of today, I got an email that they are not pursuing that project. But we can still kind of talk about this, I guess, for future, because it's probably going to happen. There's basically 3 different kinds of charging stations. Roman can talk a little bit more on the level 1, which is basically like something that you would put in your home, charges overnight. They are actively putting those in new homes right now. The Hinter Springs 4 Flex actually has them in theirs, but it basically charges overnight. It's not very different than like a plug that you would have for like an RV or whatever.
Yeah, it's basically a 240 volt plug-in for your drive. Those are the type ones.
Level 2 is like the one that's at Target right now. We just handled that as basically an accessory structure, made sure that it didn't impact their parking. And that's kind of how we handled it. And that was kind of our first one that we had. The level 3 would be a much larger one. Those have other issues just because of the grid system and things like that. But I put some reading in there for you. There's a lot of ways that you can handle this. It can be a land use issue where you can create basically a land use and designate areas on it. You'll see stuff where they talk about, accessibility to these, where they can go, things like that. Some communities even require them on new construction. So it's just, Steve had asked to put it in because there was more of a safety concern with the underground parking facility. We never actually got a permit because they didn't take one out.
So the new facility in Wausau, has a parking ramp as well for underground parking.
Yeah, so the level 3 tends to be what's in parking ramps.
The new one with the restaurant.
Oh.
They've got in the basement as well. I think, is the problem, is it because of the hazards which some of the prior ones which starting on fire?
I think it's more the vehicles, isn't it, that you guys are concerned with? Not the
That's-
chargers?
Starting out of in that garage. I mean, sprinkler will put out a fire from above, but those things do thousands of gallons to put them out.
It's a lot
Well,
of
that's the
electricity.
vehicle, not the,
The batteries.
It's the batteries in the vehicle.
They do have them in that building. And one of the buildings they have them in the middle of the building.
well, they did not get a permit. for
Where was that at?
Further
So the ones we just did over for Dayton Freight, we put disconnects and they didn't like the disconnects where they were right in front of the building. And we said, well, if you want to move, we can move them, but they want them moved around the corner. So you can't see them. I'm like, well, then there's no purpose to have a disconnect because the fire department, when they come there and if they're burning, they're not going to go looking around the corner for disconnects. You need it as close by as possible so you can disconnect power to shut things down. So that's the problem with it. And I think there's more of an issue with the NECA code where they need to visit that as well as far as the requirements and how far they can be away from the disconnects should be away from the chargers as well. So
And that becomes more of a building code.
And currently the electrical code is far behind technology.
and they're not required, I believe, anything under 50 amps. You don't have to have one, but it's over a little bit 60 amps. or
60 amps.
You know,
Then you need to disconnect.
I think my opinion would be level 1 or 2. I'm not worried about. Level 3, I think you should be worried about. And I'd use an analogous situation to gasoline. We used to have an underground storage tank with 3,000 gallons. We no longer do. But the compliance that you had to have, you had to have a monitoring system. You had to have an emergency shut off. There were substantial requirements if you're going to have that quantity of gasoline in storage, whether it's above ground or below ground. Now if you want to go fill up a 5-gallon gas can, just go to the gas station, fill it up, bring it back to business, right? There's not an issue or, concern. And would state that probably all of us have a gas can in our garage unless you got an electric mower, right? You know I have a 5-gallon can in my garage. You know, I use it for the snow blower and the lawnmower. And I think probably most people do, and I don't think we could concern ourselves as a community. But if you're gonna tell me you're gonna put an above ground 500-gallon gas tank in your lot, now I think we better get concerned. Is charging in the same respect, you know, like you said, under, you know, I think they said they were 20 amps or something, 30 amps for level 2, which is not 240 volt, but amp, you know, the amp draws.
Once we get out there where they drove to do 100 amps each, and there's a dual station, so we have 200 amps going each.
Yeah,
each station.
so I'm not too concerned about 1 or 2 unless there's something I'm missing, but 3, yeah, I think that's something you would want to regulate.
So those level 3 charging stations that's not something you're gonna buy at Home Depot. No. Like that's,
Well, they're
Depends
referencing
on-
as like a gas station, so those are like a gas station.
right, like you're gonna have $100,000 investment in doing this or more. WPS is gonna have to facilitate additional power to your facility and may say, no, you can't have one. In some of our rural areas, I don't know that you're gonna get some of these level 2 charging stations there.
So we have our first 2 at that apartment. But, yeah.
What do you remember what the acreage is?
Which is the village will need to be involved in this, that the electrical requirements that are there for anchoring or whatever it means. I guess.
I think there's two ways.
That is what limits what can be provided in a place, right?
So the municipality could get involved a couple of different ways. One, just like the bike rack, we can mandate, hey, new construction, we really want you to be green and charge it. I don't think that that's our place, especially in Weston, central Wisconsin area. If this were Phoenix, we have a different situation. I know a guy that works in the automotive industry and that kind of stuff works way better down there than it does up here. So that's one aspect. Another one is the safety aspect, right? So where you mentioned, you know, hey, we need tens of thousands of gallons, but not necessarily the charger. I mean, the charger is a concern, but we've got huge batteries. I know GMC Hummer, right? Huge electrical capacity on 4 wheels. That's an 11,000 pound vehicle, 12,000 pound vehicle. That's your 50,000 gallons of water, or whatever, put this thing out with. So slash when it catches on fire.
And that's
Absolutely concerned.
That's why I asked this to be put on here, because how many times, I mean, even on a regular vehicle, how many times have you been to a structure fire or a regular vehicle set on fire in a garage? I mean, the house has gone up in flames.
It's all one.
But in this situation where if you've got a parking garage with, you know, a whole bunch of vehicles underneath it, if you've got, you know, a regular automobile, yeah, you might have time to get in there and put that out. But if you got a fire that's gonna burn for hours and take thousands of gallons of water to put out, you get a bigger problem.
The one nice thing, I guess, is the version you're all inspecting, but you do have the extra vehicles next to it that you have explosions for their gas, if they weren't very battery, you got the gas tanks and so on and so forth, but definitely if it was a wood frame structure, I would be really nervous. I wouldn't think I would allow it. Just my opinion.
But the risk is still there, Gary, whether you're using a level 1 charger that plugs into a 15 amp outlet, right? That's, if your car's gonna catch on fire while it's charging.
Yeah, it's just you're taking less of a chance of something because you're giving it lower amperage than you are on the high amps. You know, when you're feeding something, you know, in a half an hour charge, you're fully charged, that's a lot of juice.
Think how hot your phone is when you use one of those lightning chargers.
Precisely.
So versus charging it over 12
Ford is
hours.
what's typically gonna start on fire,
Mhm.
and that's gonna transfer to the.
So fast forward this time, oh, go ahead.
I don't know much about electric vehicles, but I'm guessing every time you park it, you don't expect it to plug in. So I mean, you could be anywhere and have, you know, even if there's not a charging station in that parking garage, you could still have 5 cars that are electric cars that, if, you know, another car catches on fire, that one's going up in flames then too, and, you know, there wasn't a charging station, so we still have the issue of trying to put it out, but not, you know, it didn't have a charger, we said, yeah, we not heard anything that. But yet, somebody's friend was visiting, their car happened to be an electric car that caught on fire.
Can't prohibit the Tesla from parking there.
Yeah,
Well, how many cars are starting on fire just themselves besides one are being charged? Is there any stats on that?
I thought those instances where they're starting a fire when they're driving down the road, aren't there?
I think they're now or just parked, yeah. I don't pay much attention to them.
I know that fire chief asked to change, there's some fee schedules you guys changed because of, there was one on 20.
Because they take so much.
Well,
Chief Finke was saying that
restart on fire.
some of these vehicles, when they start on fire, they have to like take them and like submerge them in water for 24 hours to get the fire to go off.
They won't put
Because they
themselves,
restart.
they won't put themselves out.
No,
They have to burn themselves out, or you have to submerge.
You can't put them out until the charge is gone.
Right, it has to burn itself out. So,
and maybe we don't need to do anything with this right now. It just was a conversation that came up at a safety meeting.
and that was just the other comment I was gonna make is that, on June 9th, the federal government, the administration just issued a whole bunch of new, well, first they announced they're going to put $5 billion and there's going to be 500,000 charging stations funded from the federal government, and they're going to be along main highways. Anyway, there's all kinds of materials from the White House that have come out along with this announcement. And so there's some more timely things, including there's one that's specifically tailored to, and it's called the Rural EV Toolkit. And it has all kinds of things related to locations and whatnot as to how rural communities and suburbs are going to be a focus, because that's the places that there aren't chargers, that they want to have chargers. So anyway, I guess my point is, I think there's going to be a lot of federal and state directive as they start to roll out the $5 billion as to where it's going to go and what things should look like. And I think that also would have an impact. And this is specifically related to the fast chargers, because that's where we see that there's the gap. The federal, from scanning through the documents, it appears that they think it's most likely that places that want to attract a particular client, resident, whatever it would be, will put in their own charging system. So that would be the level 2s, or if they decide that a fast charger is what they want at the facility, they'll put those in. That's not what the new money is supposed to do, and that's not what the feds are supposed to do. So they're trying to pick up where the holes will be. And so the hotels, like, I would just going to say, how did Blue Mountain handle, or how were they involved with the Hilton Gardens? Because they have, I think, the only fast chargers in the area, according to the Tesla website.
Well, is Target the fast chargers? Or
It's a
no?
level 2, I don't know. I think
Yeah, they actually have, I'm only familiar with
Target
the
didn't show
Tesla
up yet.
website, and so the Tesla one shows the only fast charger in central Wisconsin is at the Hilton Garden. They have the level 2 chargers at Chuck's other property, the Courtyard, on the west side, and they've had that for 2 or 3 years already. But anyway, the point is, that certain properties are going to put it in if they feel it's going to benefit their needs. But I'd be more concerned about what the federal and state guidelines and regulations are going to be related to, because they're going to force these in certain locations where they don't think someone's going to step up to do it. And so I'm not sure anything that we do on a local level is going to be worth it until you see what they say is how they're going to handle it.
Are you just addressing that just because of the safety as far as getting them inside of facilities, or just as a whole?
Yeah, I just thought it would be a good thing to get here and discuss, not only for that, but for future planning. I mean, this is something that we're gonna see a lot more of in the next 10, 15 years.
How come you guys don't have a bunch of money
Because that would have made us a $16 million. Yeah.
It already is.
I
Is
did.
it our job to provide?
I didn't know if you guys were charging your plow trucks with that or.
You don't mark that. I want-
I'm not drinking it. Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I know.
Do we,
You have blackouts already, how are we gonna do this job?
do we need any more on this tonight, or, I mean, are you guys, should we, I kind of like what you had to say about maybe wait to see what the feds.
Well, I don't think it's something that's going away. We've brought them in our buildings, we put the conduits in for them, because we have some in Stratford that some guy wanted one installed, and we just said, yeah, we'll install it. If you want to buy your own unit, we're not gonna buy a unit for you for a 1-year lease, but we just started roughing the conduits in for the panels out to the garages, and we just conduit, so you can always pull the wire out and do it, but it's coming. Just a matter of how many before they figure out it takes more money to make the batteries than it does to the emissions that we're putting out in the sky are, if not more than what it is to for vehicles around the road, but that's my input. My opinion, I guess.
Anybody got anything else?
7 years we'll be talking about disposal of that.
Yeah, but we can't get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get rid of it. Where are we putting them?
We'll put the cabin under it.
Maybe we can put them in the banks of the all the mines.
Do you need anything else, Jen? I mean, I was one requested it to be put on there, but I guess if.
How do you guys feel about it? I mean, what is your input or what?
But it's not just cars. I mean, now it's bikes. There's bike, I think this year so far, some people died in New York just from charging bikes because they roll them in the house, or they make the door, so there's the fire at the door, took it out. And we like to see it not in the buildings.
Yeah.
Because they won't trap people in there. Yeah. I see it.
Well, and how do you prevent somebody from, because is it a bicycle one at 120 charger?
I don't even know, some of these
Yeah,
fancy
there's
ones
one.
have some pretty decent ones. And then the other problem is people, they lose the cord, leave it on vacation, then they go just rig something up. And then that's when you do it.
Or like your cell phone, right? So you got a charger that came with your phone that Apple or Samsung made, and you go to the gas station and buy the $4 charger, and that's when it melts down in the cup holder. Same thing's gonna happen for your electric car. You buy one that comes with it, and then you buy a gas station model or the dollar store model that melts down, and you call them Marty.
If you are lucky enough to call Marty.
We beat this up enough for now?
Yeah, I just think it's probably something that, to the point of that, I think it should be something to talk about in the future as far as where how and what size should be. Maybe we gotta get some more information from other municipalities as well.
This was that.
I'll have to look, I didn't do that.
Then maybe that'd be a good place to start to see who else.
There's only, I'm only showing 3, there's one in there, one
So
somewhere in
I'm check
Rossville.
Madison, they're kind of liberal.
I'm sure Madison is something.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
I know my dad's in a facility, it's got underground parking with, and they've got either 1 or 2 charging stations.
But how can we limit that?
And that's in Oconomowoc.
Wouldn't that be like limiting a dryer? No, sorry, Steve, you can't put it in like your dryer. You have to hang on a clothesline next to chicken coop. But it's just an appliance, right? You can't regulate.
I don't
how
think you
you
can,
mine
I don't think you
electricity.
can regulate it in single family homes. I think the only space that we're maybe concerned about is parking garages, maybe.
Well, what about your house garage?
Residential living.
What's the difference with the parking garage or your house garage?
The difference is
It's
you
your,
versus the public. right?
yeah, you versus.
That's where I would draw the line right away. I'd say it's different if you're in an apartment building with 200 people that you're not living with versus your single family home.
If you want to take that risk on your
But
own.
typically, you're gonna have a sprinkler system in a, you know, a multi-family, and you're not gonna probably have one in the.
But he's telling you it's not gonna matter.
Yeah, that's not gonna matter.
So
No matter which way you
prohibit-
look at it, sprinkler system or not, it's not.
So then, you know, you can look at that, Gary, is just prohibiting the parking of the electric vehicles inside. That would be the one, because you can't make a sprinkler that's gonna put this thing out. And then how do you consider that an electric vehicle? So if your truck has auto start and stop,
That's what I said, it's best just to see what a big community like Madison has. I mean, just see if they have any ordinances or how they regulate some of that stuff, right? And then maybe,
All right, letter E, amendments to section 94.4.10, parent 3, outdoor assembly of special cars, referred from board of trustees.
So this was referred from the board of the trustees at the last meeting following the Aero Sports Bar annual parking lot party. Hunter is here. I went through and looked at the ordinance, I compared it to Wausau's, I gave some recommendations. From my end, because my staff is the one that tends to have to look at these. And I'm suggesting like that we go similar to Wausau and not require a permit unless it cannot meet some specified performance standards. I would also revise the language to coincide with the noise ordinance or add something in it specifically to allow the commercial areas to have a little bit longer time. Hunter usually has it till 11 o'clock. Our noise ordinance is 10. He does have another one coming up that we saw on Facebook, so I was suggesting that this one go to the board next week to talk about and to give them the special instead of Valerie or I issuing it. And I mean, we did take a lot of phone calls after that last one.
so what were the phone calls that?
there's a noise or what?
Yeah, but it didn't make sense because the people that could hear it, like one gentleman lives over on Gelman, over by the trailer park. He called and complained and called me about 4 times about it. Both Travis lives over by it and didn't hear a thing.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So I don't know, but that, there were people calling the police department and basically they decided they would have a permit, so they didn't do anything. And they shut it down at 11, so, I don't know, Jim put it on the board agenda, so that's kind of where it came from, and it was referred to you guys.
Yeah, like I think, I'm not trying to discourage these events by any means. My only intent for putting it out there was community awareness, right? So I don't think the community as a whole has a problem, even if you exceed that decibel limit until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. But they want to know that, hey, July 14th is my day. We're gonna have a party this weekend. Why don't you come down and spend some money in our store, right? And join the fun. But it's not put out there. It's you lay on a couch watching TV at 10:06 p.m. and you hear a band. Okay, well, what is this? I was caught off guard by that. I know you guys have parties every year, and then it wasn't until I reverse engineered, like, oh, okay. Oh, wait, they don't even have a permit for this. And then that was a whole thing where I don't know, it was just a perfect storm of, so people are off and it went through the procedures, but the check mark didn't go in the box, so it didn't get posted as a public record or whichever. And I just thought, well, gosh, we do such a great job of announcing we're gonna flush the fire hydrants, and everybody in the village gets a postcard. I'm not saying we gotta mail everybody a postcard, but we put it on Facebook, we put it on Nextdoor, we put it on the village website that they say we have this special event permit. We have excessive noise until 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. on this date. And then put your little flyer on there. To be transparent to the village.
So how long of a, like a timeline would you like me to get that in to the board?
Well, it's not there. That's why I wanted to bring it here, because there is no procedure for it.
Well, there is a 10-day, but in an effort to not keep you from having it, because it was a perfect storm. You brought it in Wednesday.
Yeah.
Valerie met with you
Right.
Thursday during the day. She sent it out right away. You came in to pay it on Friday, Valerie wasn't here, Aaron didn't know that it was there, and Sarah didn't know either. So it didn't get issued until Monday, because I knew what was going on, because I followed the email string. But, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we do have a 10-day, but we don't ever get them. I mean, I just happened to see that, if you went on their Facebook page, I see that they're having another one at the end of July, so I had Valerie reach out. I don't know if that's not necessarily something I'm always going to see too, you know, so.
Yeah, that's.
We didn't
that's
get a
just
whole
me
lot of
thinking
direction
to be a
from
good
the
neighbor,
board. They
right?
just
But
said,
how soon before your event do you have to book a band? You're not booking this guy on Friday. to come
Real
on Saturday.
quick, just in the sake of doing, can you just state your name and address for the
Yeah,
record, please?
Hunter Tesler, 302 Francis Street, Rockville, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Hunter. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry, continue.
So like how soon before the event? You got a thing going this week Saturday. You're not calling a band on Friday afternoon saying,
No.
hey, can you come play? You're booking this thing weeks or months in advance, right?
8 to 12 months out, yeah.
Right. So I was just under the impression that, gosh, we could all play well together, and you know about this thing 8 months in advance.
Right.
So if Jennifer had changed the rules and regulations of, hey, we want to know 30 days, so that she's got enough time to get her staff to get it together, that, hey, we're gonna put this public notice or whichever that shows on the website, yeah, kind of promoting your event, but at the same time, letting residents know, hey, we're gonna have local music, we're gonna have extra cars parked on Fuller Street, we're gonna have whichever.
Does 10 days still allow us to do that though?
it depends. I mean, it could, but it depends on what type of notice.
I mean, if it's just social media, if someone gets something in 10 days, you have something on social media in 9 days out, done. I don't know if it needs to be 30 days out. I mean, that's just. And I also, so was any of this changing the amount of time that you, or how late you can go with this ordinance? Can you not go past 10 o'clock with the changes listed, or would that still be allowed if it's permitted?
If it's permitted, then
Okay.
it can. That's how our ordinance is written now.
Currently, correct? So,
And my
so-
suggestion was if somebody was gonna follow whatever standards you put in, then we didn't even have a permit for it. But that doesn't work with Jim wanting us to notify people. If you want us to basically be advertising for this.
I don't want to be in a situation where we're turning, we already don't have like really a whole lot of anything that goes on down here, which I think is, to me, is kind of a bummer. I don't want to be in a situation where we're turning away events that could be happening in the great community of Weston because we're not allowing people to have music past 10 o'clock. I mean, it's not like it's a nightly occurrence. It's
So
9 times out of 10 it's a Friday, Saturday, it's in the summer.
My
So-
suggestion, because this is the comment that I got from the people that were complaining. What gives you the right to supersede the ordinance? Where does it say you can do that? Because I mean, it's normally once a year, so we're like, okay, it goes an extra hour. So Valerie issued it. And because we have been for the last 4 years, I would like to see something that says that, because right now it says the noise ordinance or by special permit. And that's what I was getting basically hammered on the call.
Yeah,
Was
no
the
matter what
fact
you're
that
gonna do.
I made the judgment, my staff made the judgment to allow it. And when they were calling the police department said, the village approved it. So we can't issue any kind of noise ordinance violation or tell them, they'll tell them to turn it down, it's too loud.
So what you're saying is it needs to be spelled out in our ordinance. that
It
can-
probably should be,
That it can go till 11 as long as it's permitted.
it probably should make something like that, because
Okay.
it would be better on the staff. Because that was the big hang up that I got from Mr. Wyman.
And it's better on your applicant, right? It's better on your business owner.
Right.
These guys don't want bad press either of, hey, we had police show up 4 times or
I mean,
whatever.
for us, it's in a commercial area, these are things that promote community, because we don't have a lot of that event, so for us, and our standpoint, we just issued it. But it became a problem this time for whatever reason.
The guy in Gilman.
I don't know if you know Mr. Violet. I know, but you can't, I cannot say that to him, so, yeah.
Depends on the way the wind blows.
So it sounds to me, so do we need to just modify this to put that language in that you
Well, that's what I would like. I mean, I'm not really sure the direction the board was going. Maybe they would be okay with that. That's what I would like to see if we're going to not.
So do we have to make a recommendation for that for it to go to the board?
Well, it'll have to go through public hearing. I have to change it because it's part of the.
So essentially tonight, you're just looking for guidance on what to do.
I guess
here.
so. The board's got to
So
hear.
Jen, no matter what, are you still gonna get hollered at if it goes past 7 o'clock and because you gave the permit?
No, because there's something, they were reading that section of the code. So as long as it says in there that, I mean, we probably would put it to 11 o'clock if we were in a commercial area or something.
I think that's more than fair. I mean, for one, maybe 2 weekends a year, there's not much. I mean, it's,
And you can make it 11 o'clock on
It's a
a Friday
community
and Saturday,
thing.
Right,
right?
we can put,
Yeah,
I mean, and
right,
that's
I
when they
mean-
are.
It's not a Tuesday night at 11 o'clock.
no, you could write the code that way too. You can limit it to 2 nights a week. Friday and Saturday, you can play till 11. Monday through, or Sunday night through Thursday night, it's gotta be 10 o'clock. You could write the ordinance that way too. I mean, what events realistically, I mean, unless we had an event that's at the level of the Wisconsin Valley Fair that came, which I doubt it's ever gonna happen. You would never have music on Tuesday night.
Have you ever been to a Wassa supply party?
Those are only two things.
You have any input on the
Gotta bring it home.
I mean, not really.
Only for the
We're
first half of the party.
Your own chicken, don't bring a plate. That would probably be, I was hoping that we'd figure something out like that, which, we could come to an agreement on something, but that's.
Do you, I mean, you may, and I know things change, so if you schedule that band 7, 8 months earlier, doesn't mean necessarily that they're gonna show up that day either, right?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, they could call in, especially since COVID, they could call in somebody's sick, they're not gonna show up. Or, I mean, sometimes they're contracted, so they technically have to show up unless, but other than that, yeah, there's no guarantee. They have to show up.
Is that typically why you're waiting to pull your?
No, I just don't like to get it out there a little bit too early, and then people just forget about it and gets lost in like social media,
Okay.
and then it just gets drowned out, so I like to hit them like a month before, so people get it just like fresh in their brains,
Sure.
yeah. and people
Well,
think
as
of-
far as the application with the planning department, or the.
Yeah.
Because if they do that, they're not putting stuff on social media, right?
We don't know.
No, so ultimately, that's what I was referencing, getting a permit if that was holding as well. But you were waiting for them to
Yeah,
reassure you that they're actually coming.
yeah, I definitely should be, giving you guys that like 2 months at least, ahead of time, but I mean, 10,
I don't think we need 2 months, right? I think
No,
it's 10 days adequate,
Yeah, that's.
I think 10 days. is-
but I think what I read was,
It came in.
and it
2 days
typically
before
is,
the event.
because you kind of, oh shit, I forgot to get this permit, right?
Yeah,
Oh shit, right? I mean, it happens, we're all,
right, yeah.
that's the last thing you're
And that's
worried
why
about.
we accommodated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the last thing you're worried about is getting a permit, because you're worried about planning for a party.
Yeah.
So I
And now
understand.
we had notified, the way that our permit software goes is basically she approves it or Roman approves it. It doesn't actually get issued to them until they pay for it. So that was what the hangup was. The police department knew about it, Safer knew about it. She notified everybody about it that needed to know from staff, but it just wasn't issued. So it wasn't out on like the village, if somebody wanted to evolve.
So that's the other issue, Hunter. So like you went on Sunday night and looked for permit and there was, you didn't see it. It didn't exist because it hadn't been paid for.
Right.
So is that
So
why-
that might quell
so
some of the
this one-
complaints.
It just,
Yeah.
it
Why
worked
the
like
one that
too
was-
late,
is it kind
you
of-
know, so like, it didn't show up until like Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came in and paid for it ahead of time, but they just didn't know where to receive it.
Right, because I didn't get, I didn't get it in the email, so it's just,
And then it's not in the system. So if people are sitting at home on Saturday night, like, oh, I'm gonna go check and see if there's a permit sheet for this. And there wasn't anything there, then to an extent.
And then the cops showed up and I was like, well, what are you doing here? They're like, we just have to come and check for the noise, for somebody calling for the,
Oh, decibels.
yeah, that's cool, but he just like, I'm just here to check it out. So I figured that they knew somehow, through the grapevine that permit was okay, else they would shut it down for sure.
So on, is it Sunday that Pam sent your email out? So
Yeah, I think so.
She's been doing it.
constant contact, whatever, it says, you know, we got these roads that we're working on, it, that'll be done this week, or flushing a fire hydrant, or whatever, or the GG playhouse thing, is your response to that, or balloon thing. Would you be opposed to the Sunday before that going out in the village-wide email that everybody subscribes to? Like, and that's what I'm trying to do, like, put it there, put it on the website, so when folks click on.
But who's gonna do that?
That's part of our community engagement people that we have right now anyway.
Is that something that you have staff that's time to do?
I think that we had some differences of opinion among the board members about
Yeah,
whether we
that's
should do
kind
that
of-
or not. So I think it's a
That's-
policy decision of the board. And we do have a new employee starting next week that we are planning to be having social media things being part of their
There needs to be more
regular
of a
routine.
policy, because like if Valerie's not here, someone may not necessarily know the code out there. She tends to be the ones that she's involved in. There's a whole nother permit process for some other events that the village is in. It's more of a special event because it's on public property, so we tend to put that on.
Like the recycling
Well,
event thing, or the.
What I heard from the rest of the board was that they took up, it sounded like there was more of an issue with promoting an event that's not sponsored by the village. But if we're just putting it out there simply to notify people that, hey, there's gonna be loud music playing tonight, we're not like supporting this event, we're not promoting this event, we're just saying, hey,
Right,
this
it's
is
just
going
like the
on,
fire
you
hydrant
should be
thing.
aware of it, done.
Yep, so the fire hydrant thing says
I
we're
think
flushing
that's where the
hydrants
difference is.
in this area on this date, and you might have brown or discolored water.
I was just trying to wake you up. Is that why when I went by your place at like 10:30, we're all dancing on the street? Sure. No,
Does it, do you have enough from us, Jen? ETZ, you guys have anything to add?
crazy.
You guys are already ready to have it.
So Jen, you just push it out to 11 on Fridays and Saturdays?
I will.
Can we just,
amend it
is
to
there
that,
any possibility that you can just amend the ordinance for noise until 10 or 11 on? I mean, 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday? And then you don't have to worry about it.
Actually, I could do that.
I mean, that would
Because
be a
I
lot
can
easier.
do, that's actually not in the zoning code. So I could actually propose that to the board next week.
That actually would,
Then,
what do you? I'm okay with
Well, then would you
that, just for
even-
Friday and Saturday.
Or I could just put something in there, so it doesn't actually have to come to you guys, because that would be, it doesn't require a public hearing, that would be through the noise ordinance, which is just a regular chapter.
then you wouldn't have to be explaining to anybody and you'd say, well, it's in the ordinance.
Well, they could ask permit too.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll draft something for the board then. We can have that for you.
So what if every Friday and Saturday throughout the entire summer, they have dance till 11 o'clock? All the residents in the area, the elderly people that A, don't go on social media, and B, want to go sit out back and have a quiet campfire, you know, the whole summer. I mean, I'm not against it, but I'm just saying, just in the double advocate.
So that's the other side, of changing it completely versus the special event. Is that what you're saying? You made it a special event where you can only do it a couple
So,
times a year?
The way that the code, this code reads for this outdoor assembly, it references the noise ordinance, I believe. So I'd have to look at, adjust that.
But you generally don't have more than 200 people at your
No,
facility.
but I do what Val's saying, if you wanted to, we could. Right. Is that what you're saying now?
On a Friday or Saturday for this party.
If it wasn't a party, no. Okay. If it was just a regular Saturday night. There's not too many people there.
Travis, can you hear it by your place?
This would
I
only
can
be
hear it.
for that
I don't know.
special event outdoor assembly,
This one,
so
right?
he'd have to be taking out a permit every.
And is that your question, Valerie? Like, could you take out an event every week, or you're just saying, hey, can you have a lot bar at 11 o'clock every night?
Well, it says each such use or activity shall not exceed 14 days per quarter. So that's in the zoning code.
There you go.
So
And in
you
your
can only
case,
do it 14 days.
The luster of it's gonna wear off if you do it every weekend. You wouldn't get the same crowd, you wouldn't be doing it.
So it's argument. I'll take a look at it, but the noise ordinance aspect is, Because it says, in here, it says, if the subject property is located within or adjacent to a residential zone area, activities shall be limited to daily hours unless licensed for a longer. I'll have to look, we may have to do something with it. I'm not sure why this is. daily hours.
So anybody within the trailer park complaining?
I'm not sure where other Metro got the complaints. There were complaints that came through the county. Through the non-emergency line. Mine was just, we may have had it.
Has this been the only time? Or were there?
I don't
This is
remember one last year. I don't remember.
That happened in the past, but this is an abnormally high amount.
About 5 years ago,
It might have had something to do with the weather that night too, because the wind, like, it was just super calm and the air was heavy and maybe, I don't know, maybe it just
Carried farther.
carried farther for some reason.
It didn't make sense who was complaining if we weren't paying them.
All right, anybody got anything else or we good?
Sure, we'll figure something out.
I'm not trying to rush.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I have it.
All right, staff reports, 9 and 10, June 2023, staff approved certified survey maps and site plans, and June 2023 building permits.
Now it's 9.
Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you.
Thanks. Second.
Motion by Pincinel. Second by Mumford. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So carried. Miscellaneous, item number 11, project updates.
So I actually got this done and put it in the packet for you. And so just a couple, I guess, major points. There are some issues with the water landing that Travis and Roman will be, I saw the report today from Weston. We'll be giving them, and the board will be looking at their license on Monday, again, I believe. But there's some issues there, so there may be moving forward with a relocation of their license. We're still working on a number of site plans. I think the only one that you really need to know about would be the Scooters Coffee has backed out. So I had sent the approval in early June, and then just like last week, Keller said that they were withdrawing the project, so and that came from the corporate, so I'm not exactly sure what happened. They didn't really give me anything.
Yeah, to be honest with how many other like coffee places.
Well, I was wondering if it was that, and then somewhat of the problem maybe with the actual property.
They were
Because
trying
it's,
to cut off part of the property, and I don't think the property owner wanted to sell it.
yeah,
Roman, has Stillwater gotten any better?
No, I mean, the reports, Travis has done a magnificent job with it, he's just really crossing his T's and dotting his I's on it, so it should be done tomorrow, probably. It hasn't gotten anywhere.
So
They have contacted us last week
it was last week. There's
right
a
after the board meeting.
new manager who is now asking questions about permits and stuff. I think that's a good.
But not related to fixing anything, it's related to putting new units in.
Right.
So is there a formal complaint coming from the two of you?
We're going to submit it to the board.
Okay.
And send it to them, them being 52 properties, who owns the park. From there, we do have to give them timelines on repairing the issues based on severity. Because that's tied to the license issuance or revocation. Like, if we don't do that, if we don't give them that timeline, then when the board does not approve their permit, we haven't followed the way the ordinance is written out. Okay. So, we can definitely, if the board wishes on Monday, we'll definitely have some more discussion about it. I want that report to go to the board before we file any complaint with the clerk.
Okay. Is the health department filing one?
Not to my knowledge.
I thought there was
spoken
some
to Sarah this
sanitary
week.
issue in there.
Yeah, Sarah has, I communicate with Sarah pretty regularly about the park, and they haven't passed one of her inspections in several years. So her process, because they're so focused on just park enforcement essentially throughout Rappahannock County, they're in there every 30 days after failed inspections. So she's in there all the time. Okay, so they're aware of what the county considers as issues, which are not that far off from what we consider issues. It all kind of falls under the same umbrella. So it's not their lack of understanding of what the issue from a park ownership standpoint. We have to give them the due process. That's what we have to do. So it's, if we want any, I know all we want to do is get cleaned up essentially, but in order to put pressure on them, we have to give them the due process. To lose a vehicle, the problem.
I was gonna say, is last year was paying something that we paid.
It's a lot of empty promises.
We have not seen any plan for any paving project other than, just concepts. There hasn't been an official, so this is our paving plan. So that's bad. There was a house fire in there back in March. That building is still sitting there. There was a roof collapse in February. That one's privately owned. We talked with the property, with the building owner on that one. He's going to have it removed. The flip side of that is we've got people in other parks that just take care of their own stuff. We've got a lady who reached out to us to get a demolition permit for a house that she's not living in anymore in one of our floors. So, Weston, yeah. So it's just it's been so neglected that most of the occupants in there are a handful that really care. And, so that's where we really want to try and support those people, and as opposed to closing the park, which doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't.
But you benefit your own.
Right. Right. So.
Sorry for bringing that up. Sorry.
It's on the forefront of our minds on a daily basis.
What's the whole up with interstate?
I haven't. I'm gonna go back through and see what they need to get us. They never signed, we didn't get some of the things back. They were still waiting to sign the stormwater and things like that, so.
Okay. I see
They have a sign, but yeah, it's just following that around each other.
Fuzzy is finally going too.
Yeah.
Was there an understanding reached with the community center with the fire prevention, or moving a hydrant, or?
I contacted Jason, Jason, what's his last name?
Jablonski.
I don't know. Jason, yeah, Jablonski, and we were gonna set up a meeting to talk about the status, what happened during the review and what the recommendation has been, so we'll see what he has to say, and we'll get together.
So Jen, we have a 24th start date, I think, at Interstate. Is that that's not a goal if they were up there on the line?
Oh yeah, they were, they probably will. I think some of it is they just didn't have all they were still getting approvals from the board. Some of that was. They had to sign off on everything. Yes.
They have the building, electrical, HVAC, and plumbing permits in the system.
There's just, we're supposed to have a meeting between the two lawyers on about, that's basically what
Is that gonna be on the board agenda for Monday?
they were supposed to.
We're expecting it to be.
Okay.
They know that we need to have it by Wednesday, and they get it on Monday. They were trying to set up a meeting this afternoon, which didn't happen, so the other option is tomorrow. So
Okay.
it's kind of in the court right now to get the meeting set up.
Ryan Street Reynolds and, progress on that
I've
process.
seen some movement over
Yeah, they're removing the old fence, which caused several calls from the neighbors. Just they were concerned about what was gonna happen and time frame of the new fence installation, and this stuff doesn't just magically appear, the new fence is up. So they've got to prep the site, get the fence in on the west side, and they're putting in the detention. So
They're
I mean,
aware of the
Travis,
timelines. It's in the hands of the building department right now.
Travis and I made a visit to Brad out there while he was on site. Said hi.
And they're on track for whatever they had you done by November.
Yeah. He knows what he needs to do, and he'll probably go all the way to November.
that Steer locally one, is that moving or is that dead?
I don't know, I haven't heard anything since they came to the board. So
Sounds good.
it might be good. I don't know. But his projects tend to like come and
Yeah.
it's like a year or two later and they'll come back.
Jennifer copy, covered it pretty well, although we do understand that Kristen, Bishop Peterson has been in contact with the individuals interested in possibly developing the former Alpine mobile home property. So we'll see where that goes.
By the way, is on hold.
I gotta follow back up on them again. The construction side of it wants the permit. The engineering side said the DNR made them move the building and like you saw the draft agenda. They were supposed to get me something for it and they never did. So I'm not sure what the holdup is. And so I need to follow back up with them. I told them what the timeline was to get it on the agenda. So and I have no idea. We haven't seen any plans, so I don't know what they're doing.
That's the 19th was the last time I heard anything from.
Yeah.
We were having a tough time finding subs.
Anybody got anything else for Jen, project updates?
Just Keith, is there any other tip, progress that they're doing?
Not from my end, she's covered it pretty well. So,
I suppose we could have adjourned, you guys. I'm sorry. I feel bad. I completely forgot.
We'll see how bad you feel.
Yeah. It's almost fun. All right, item 12, announcements and committee commissioner remarks / staff referrals. And you got any? No? No? Very. No?
Good.
No?
No.
I have one. Where did we leave off in that conversation about the FPA requirements? Is that something I haven't heard for?
Yeah, the
you talking about the Fairhead replacement?
I don't know. No, it's for the temporary structures.
Yeah,
I didn't get a chance to look at that.
not just that, but I mean other things too, because
Well, it ends up being more of a intense drama thing than Roman and Murray. So it's not necessarily, the only place in the zoning code it like just refers generally to it. So it doesn't, it's more of a building.
Yeah, I mean,
side
that
of
PA
things.
is an extremely large
Not
umbrella.
a zoning.
No pun intended.
Is-
It's electrical, it's, it's general fire code itself, so what specific portions of the.
well, there was, so Project Timberwolf, they wanted to put up a tent.
Right.
For a year. And if PA says you can't have a tent up for 180 days. Or for longer than 180 days. Well, listen, I'm not the one doing the tent, just in case anybody was wondering. I don't want this to be like a conflict of interest. So I have no idea who they're using. They're gonna put up some sort of structured facility, but I guess my thought was, to some extent, sometimes with NFPA, there's an old like saying that NFPA stands for not perpetual application. So in a sense, it is a guideline. It's not enforceable by state law. You can, I mean, NFPA, any municipality can choose what they want to do as far, our ordinance states that we have to follow NFPA guidelines. So
the chapter 34, which is the basically fire code, talks about that. The only spot that the zoning code does is in the exterior storage standards, and it's only regarding the 10-foot. So it says must be at least 10 feet from any combustible wall, openings, or combustible roof lines as per NFPA 1, most recent edition. So that's the only place that zoning code is mentioned.
okay,
Because I did a search on the entire code of ordinances. It
I just-
comes up in chapter 34, but that's the only place that, I mean, so that's the only part we look at for it, is that it's 10 feet away.
I didn't want to hold them up. And my thought was, well, okay, 180 days, well, what happens if a company comes, re-inspects the structure and says, oh, it's good to go, or do they have to tear the whole thing down and set back up that day? It's good to go.
So the chief gave me a bunch of questions, and so that's part of when I sent back the conditional use, that got approved. I had him draft his list of questions and give them to him, and I told him that those needed to be provided at the time of voting for that. But we don't have that voting permit yet, because I don't think they decided on the structure.
No, we don't have one for the temporary structure. We've got
Just the permanent, yeah. So I think they were still looking.
So, I mean, Casey, to answer your question, on those temporary structures, just from a usage standpoint, the Weston Powerhouse down in Crumwell and Rothschild, when they put in the new plant, that rice plant, the temporary structure they used was similar size to what they want to use over at Timberwolf. And that was up for, unless they took it down, put it back up in between our visits there for inspection, that was up for well over 100 days.
Okay.
So, and they were assembling the engines inside of it and then transporting them to the final resting place.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know specifically how they were able to get over the 180 days. But, I mean, it's definitely some public county.
That's what my thought was too.
Now, which can make it any different if they take it down and put it back up.
Okay, anyways, that answers my question. Next regular meeting date, Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Entertained motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Deason, second by Mumper. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So carried. That's for PC.
Motion to adjourn ETZ.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second to adjourn ETZ committee. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, we adjourn.